Hey folks, here with your video update for this week and for a number of weeks for the season of Lent. I want to talk to you about a few things going on that are part of our traditions here at the church, every Lent and this Lent in particular. I'm here, you can see outside on the front steps of our sanctuary because we have our Lenten Prayer Tree here. The Lenten Prayer Tree is a wonderful tradition we've had here at Spring Hill Pres for a number of years. It's one that actually other churches have learned about from us and have begun implementing here in South Alabama and in other cities as well. So we're glad to be part of spreading this tradition. So the way the tradition works, I'm going to tell you about what's normal and what's new. The way the tradition works is you can tie a ribbon on the prayer tree to symbolize one of your prayers. You can tie any ribbon you like for any of any color if you'd like, but to help you think about what kinds of prayers you might be offering up to God during this season, we do have in the narthex as well as in the main hallway of the church a table with different ribbons, different colors, and a suggestion of what symbolism each color could represent. You'll see this year there's a lot of white. The white ribbons we suggest it could symbolize a prayer for peace. And so with, of course, the situation in Ukraine heavy on many of our hearts and minds, I think I'm seeing a lot more white, a lot of more prayers for peace this year than I've seen in years past. Let me put this on here as my prayer for peace today. There are also some places on the tree where you'll see folks have put the colors of the Ukrainian flag, yellow and blue together, and tied those two ribbons together. Regardless of what we might suggest the symbolism of those colors are, for the person who's praying them, that's another way of praying for the situation in Ukraine. So for years we've been doing this, for decades. The prayer tree has been part of our worship practice during the season of Lent. But last year we made an adjustment. Rather than the prayer tree being in the sanctuary, being included as part of our Sunday worship during the prayers of the people, and by being inside, the old model was we had what looked like a tree was actually dead branches, pieces of wood that were stuck in a pot filled with sand. It was a great symbolism of our prayers. But what we did last year, because of COVID, because we weren't sure where things stood in terms of being inside or outside, being in person or online for worship, that not everyone would feel comfortable, and weren't even sure about different people's hands touching the containers of ribbons, we moved the prayer tree outside last year. And that meant a few things. It meant that it's accessible at all times, not just when the building is open and unlocked and you're in the sanctuary. There are people who will be on their morning walks or runs coming by with kids or dogs, our preschoolers that go around the building, and their teachers. It's accessible, much more accessible, and our prayers are out in the community. And so the outside location has been a move of necessity that we did last year because of COVID, and now it's one that we're living into as a new pattern that we enjoy. Another thing about being outside rather than inside is that it enables, for the season of Lent, us to have a real tree, an actual live tree, not just a symbolic tree, but a living organism. Our living prayers, our living faith as we follow a living God, that we have a living tree to receive these prayers. So last year, after the season of Lent was over, we took the ribbons off, and some of our yeomen actually planted behind the chapel, planted that prayer tree. This year's prayer tree, sometime after Easter, will also be planted near last year's. I'm envisioning what might it look like if years from now we have a whole grove of prayer trees, trees from each year that remind us not only of our particular prayers in the moment, but of the communion of faith, of the great cloud of witnesses who've gone before us, and in the midst of whose hopes and dreams we continue to stand and to live and to practice ministry. So the live prayer tree, it's outdoors, it's always accessible, and it's a living tree that embodies our living faith in the living God. I mentioned the chapel, and I've strategically placed it behind me today because I also want to remind you, during the season of Lent, we kick this off on Ash Wednesday, but every Wednesday in the season of Lent, at noon on Wednesdays, we gather for a midday time of prayer. Those services are all in the chapel. They all include two special things: the communion, the sacrament of the Lord's Supper, every Wednesday at that time at noon. It's a smaller, more intimate space and time for worship, and so the method of serving communion is a little bit different. We come forward, the practice known as intinction. We come forward and receive a piece of bread, and we dip it in the cup, and then we return to our seats. So it's a little bit more personal connection there at the table. Collectively, we all come to the table, but we do so one at a time. The other thing that's special about this, and we started this, I guess it's been 7 years or so now, is the liturgy for those Wednesday services comes from the Celtic Christian tradition of Iona, Scotland. There has been throughout the centuries a community of faith there at Iona, and they produce some really beautiful, poetic, much more call and response than sometimes we're used to in our Sunday worship patterns, liturgy. And so we use some of their words. We borrow them over time. We've shifted, adjusted, tweaked them to make them fit our context. But we're using their liturgy, their Celtic Christian liturgy. Presbyterians have long had a sense of connection to Scotland, to the Celtic Christian traditions, and Iona is sort of the launching pad for that mission movement that took the Christian faith from Ireland into northern Scotland. And so that special connection to our roots as Presbyterians is part of what we do each Wednesday. So any day that you are here at the church, feel free to participate in the Lenten Prayer Tree. I want to make sure you know you can tie any ribbon or string or anything you would like on. If you want to bring ribbons from home, if you're coming by on the weekends or in the evening or any time where the church isn't open and you can't get to the pre-cut ribbons that we have, use your own, bring those. This is always here and available throughout the season of Lent. And we'll be worshiping every Wednesday, in addition to our Sunday services, every Wednesday in the chapel for our Midweek Celtic series. The sermons and scripture readings on Wednesdays accompany what we're doing on Sundays during our Lenten theme of Holy Ordinary. So I wish for you a holy Lent and a holy time of preparation as we are in the midst now of this season, in the midst of the journey to the cross and to the empty tomb. Thanks, and see you soon.